King of Podcasts proudly presents The Broadcasters Podcast, a weekly media commentary talking about traditional and digital media headlines and talking to the content creators out front and behind the scenes. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Thanks for joining me for episode 125 of the Broadcasters Podcast. A lot to get into tonight. Let me give you a quick rundown of what we got. So tonight, I want to follow up on what I talked about last week when it comes to the media, the portrayal, the coverage of what was going on with the murder of George Floyd. Now, the protests and the riots, if you're watching social media, you would know about it, but it's not out there, not in the mainstream media. And there's a lot that has to be said about what is being presented to you and what there is across all platforms, because there is a different dichotomy between traditional media and traditional entertainment and social. Because here's the thing, we're seeing the convergence of how media, entertainment, and culture are all brought into place within the digital disruption, because the digital disruption is affecting how we're looking at things, because we're seeing an opening up. I think we're seeing a breakthrough as well as to what's going on with everything that's going on with this story. Now, here's the thing. We had the coronavirus, the pandemic, which is now no longer even a discussion anywhere. But what I'm seeing about more than anything else is the news cycle's done for that. They might find a way to go ahead and resurrect that story back, because if we're not seeing people social distancing and all these protests and all these riots and all the looting, everything that's going on, and if you do not see it, listen, I am not here to offer a political viewpoint. I am independent. Just consider me Switzerland. I am neutral and trying to be objective as possible, because I'm trying to talk about what there is out there. It's like a lawyer. You're taking the evidence of what is out there, what is actually being seen that you don't see. Because if you're not looking through social media, if you're not looking for Twitch feeds or Instagram or YouTube or Facebook Live and looking for feeds that are out there by citizen journalists that are out there actually following the story, we get to hear from all different sides. Because what we hear, number one, is we get to hear from the people that are not being put up there on national network news or cable news or newspapers that are just fitting an agenda, that fit a role, fit a narrative. No, we get to hear from all voices online. That's what I'm talking about. And that's what's very important. So when you see that, you got to just say to yourself, all right, I want to know more. I want to take into consideration all the videos that I see on Twitter, in my Twitter feed, or that I see in my Facebook feed, whatever it is. I want to be able to see everything that's going on. And everything that's being talked about, from opportunists, organized groups, protesters, police brutality, and so much more. It's all out there to be seen. Stores being looted, people being rioted, people losing lives after the fact of the reason why this actually happened. But I know there's more to it. And that's because there is a political narrative being put out there. I don't like it, but it is out there. And it's quite unfortunate. So that's this moment right now I'm recording the show. I can actually go on to Twitch right now, and I can find a feed that will give me 9 different cameras of what's going on out there among everything. I can actually look right now and look, and I'll see everything that's going on. And so I'm following someone right now that's actually showing the story, and I actually can see what's going on at this moment. So like I said, I can look right now. I'm looking at 9 different screens of all the different protests that are going on. DC, Oakland, Des Moines, Iowa, and so much more. You know, I can look at Seattle. I can look at Portland, all of that. Because I've been looking to citizen journalists, and I'm looking to investigative journalists, the people that are actually getting crowdfunded and supported online. Because I'm getting more accurate information from them than me getting a narrative that's being presented and also local news, by the way, shown in the same light here. And I could get more from this, from what I'm seeing on television here, streaming to my TV through my Amazon Fire Stick more than anything else. That's what's important. That's what I'm seeing. And I can see peaceful protests. I can see not peaceful protests. I can see all of it. And a lot of different people, not necessarily giving an opinion, but reporting what's on the ground. And I got a couple things I want to go and talk about that here on the program that really encompass all this. I want to talk about Blackout Tuesday because the music industry and others, celebrities, content creators, they took a stand by not taking a stand. And that's not me saying it. There's a lot of stories that attest to that. We're going to talk about that coming up. And also, we'll look a little bit on the impact of media bias on our society. There is biases. There's no question about that. There's a lot of different stories that have been talked about by, educators, by our scholarly fellows, by, the scholastic types. Okay, I'm getting a lot of stories from there because we see a lot of studies and a lot of surveys and a lot of things going on within the media. And I want to talk about that tonight. Again, it's focusing on how they're responding to the need from what the media, entertainment, and culture are looking to get in terms of society, what they want for society, what is being asked for as social change. Specifically, in the terms of George Floyd, it's systematic and institutional change. Now, I don't use the term racism. Here's what I think. Regardless, there is racism. It exists. But then there's the point of the level of racism that I think is up for debate. I just think there is. And I'm open to the debate. Bottom line. But again, I'm not here to determine or make an opinion on that. I am just reporting what's on here without trying to give any kind of opinion. Now, I might have given an opinion right there. But again, I'm open to context. I want to see more context being brought to me. Real context, facts, figures. Give me the information. Give me the numbers. Crunch it down for me. And don't give it to me from a source that, that has a bias or has a narrative. That's my whole thing. Because if you're looking at network news, cable news, anything that you're going to watch on television, and newspapers that matter as well, there's only so much news that can fit. It's very interesting. Somebody actually talked about that there's a bit of an issue with the New York Times. And there is a story about how the slogan is all the news that's fit the print. And there are people within the New York Times, according to a story that's going on right now, that all the news is one argument that some of the New York Times staff believes in. And stories that are fit to print is what fits on the other side of the pendulum. It's an interesting story. And I think it really gets exposed and really gets a microscope right now. Because the question is this. If we have this ongoing need for social change when every time we get around election season, because you notice the last couple of events like this of police brutality on black victims, it's happened around election season. I mean, it might have happened obviously other times, but they don't get the exposure that they do now. And I believe there's got to be an agenda behind it, and that is what starts that. But then when you're looking at the everyday story that's on the ground, I'm not getting it from the national news, but the focus is on it now. The news cycle is on at this moment, so we're going to talk about it, and we're going to see people talking about it because a lot of people, because of the story being initiated and focused on. Now, it started from social media. Then it went directly to the national news because they picked up on it and said, okay, time to put this in for the news cycle. We're out of the pandemic. Let's get into this story. And they had other stories they were already building up to the third story. All these things comes in threes. So we get to the story, and here we go. So we're now at Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd. So the trifecta is here. And now is a time when the media decides to go ahead and jump on the story. But what about all the other times there might be stories that we don't know about because it's not regularly reported? It's only when the media wants to do that. The mainstream media. It's when they feel like it. It was when there's a political agenda behind it in some cases. On whichever side of the aisle you are. Okay? But with that said, every time this discussion happens, I thought the media was supposed to go ahead and be able to go ahead and initiate change. So what changes happen as a result of this? Do we get significant changes? Changes that satisfy the public. We might get some changes, but do we get changes that are for the better? And what I hear from everybody that's in media, entertainment, and culture right now, people that have, haves over the have-nots, right? You're seeing all these people that are saying, well, things are not changing. And I believe that some of the people that are out there that are celebrities or that are people that are in the media that make a lot of money, and they don't live where everyday men and women live, right? They don't live where the middle class lives. They don't live where the lower middle class or the poverty-stricken live. And some of the other neighborhoods, ethnically mixed, diverse, right? Some of these people live in gated communities, or they live in big homes with a lot of private security, gated, and they're protected. And they're isolated from everyday society. So you have some people that will come on board and they will absolutely go ahead and speak their mind when they're out of touch. Do musicians really get to know their fans except for their fandom and for their music? Do they get to know the people from a personal level? Do they get to know where they live and how they live? No. There are some that are in certain communities that will absolutely go back and reinvest in the communities they came from because they're being grateful for what they have, and they want to have the chance to help those that have not. And that's the point. See, my thing is, when I see certain celebrities and I see certain, important famous figures decide to go ahead and bail out protesters. Okay. We know that all the protesters are not black, but yet they're only going to bail out the protesters for protesting. But yet that money, whether it's $100,000, $200,000, they're not regularly helping out these neighborhoods and these people that the have-nots. They don't necessarily help the have-nots on a regular basis, do they? And that doesn't mean they have to go ahead and spend money. But do they go back to their communities and reinvest in programs and projects or working with peers and being a peer and being a role model for people? Not just a role model by like, okay, look at me on TV or look at me on a basketball court or a baseball stadium or a football field, right? There are those that you look at that reinvest. They go back and help those to make a better life for others. Okay? Think about it, if you have someone that that, like I know right now, okay, one of my examples that I have is, as you know, I've worked I did some work contractually because it was just freelance work I was able to do, and I did it for no money. I went back and worked at some radio stations that were owned and operated by a friend of mine who's a radio programmer, and he knew that I did my work in radio programming. He wanted me to help out, because he was doing some transitions on some radio stations. Wanted me to consult, wanted me to help out in production and what I could do on air and things like that. And his name's James. And he's originally from Haiti. Now, this is somebody that actually has made something of himself. He's quite an entrepreneur. He has 4 radio stations under his belt. He's a minority radio owner, right? As a company, he hires within people that know what they're doing, and also hires within the community, the Haitian community, because he wants to bring people in, because some of his programming is Creole, and he wants to help that community out. Does a lot of charity work, does a lot to go and give back to his community back home, because in his country of Haiti, he funds a soccer program, right, to have kids learn sports, get involved, and learn something that they can be really successful in, or at least learn teamwork, leadership, things like that. Plus, he took what he's doing right now with his radio stations here. He's able to go ahead and try to work to transmit out, just like the government has Radio Marti transmitted to Cuba. The same thing happens with what he's doing, Radio Vision Nouvelle. And with that station, he's actually able to go and transmit his content back to Haiti, because he has a lot of people that are in Haiti that listen to his programming, that learn what's going on, because there is an authoritarian rule there. And there's not a freedom of speech in Haiti. There's a lot of things that are going on. So he's connecting the Haitian community back to where they are from to help in that respect. And one of the things he was working on as well was opening up a news bureau so that there are reporters on site in Haiti on the ground and giving them a chance to go to a studio where they can go and be on his programming back to the States and report what's going on the ground in Port-au-Prince and other areas around the country of Haiti and report back to the States. Not just Florida, but to the rest of the country and the rest of the world for that matter. That's the kind of media that I enjoy. And that's why I did what I did for him for nothing. I didn't ask for a dime. And I loved it. It's just there was only so much work I got to do. The transitions were done. I got to work on a Spanish radio station to also do quite a bit of philanthropy and working together to connect the community together. Bring different different types of music within the Spanish music genre. Reggaeton, bayaton, salsa, merengue, bachata, norteña, banda, all the music. Cumbia, all the different types of music, the different cultures, the different styles, the different, heritages of all these different countries to consolidate a diverse Hispanic radio station. And I was a little bit, wow, this is what you want to do? And so far, he's doing fine. And this person actually, Leo is his name, he's rents out the station, and he's been paying ever since, and he is putting out content. And he's been doing very well with it. And those are two ethnic communities, and they work with everybody else. But the difference is they are helping their community directly. They've found success in what they've been able to do. They're giving back, and they're trying to help. They're helping other businesses be learned about. They're helping their fellow people back in other countries to get the stories and get the news that's going on out there. Because even my friend Leo, he also puts a lot of radio content where he's getting news reported from Colombia or Venezuela or South America or Central America, and he's getting the reports being brought back. He's introducing new artists. He's doing a lot. It's like public access in some cases. He's giving public access. Again, it's opportunities that the haves are giving to the have-nots. I think that's great. And this is what the crux is that I want to see on a larger scale. And those are just, those are regional stories. But when I look at what I'm seeing across the board, are we getting that kind of community access? Are the have-nots getting access? Because I don't want to say this is all based on color. I don't think it's so much that. I think it's based on class, status, what you have and what you don't have. And that is not anything to distinguish or to dissuade or to criticize. Those that have not, that want to have everything by any means necessary. So if somebody wants to find ulterior motives, ulterior ways to go ahead, alternative ways, whether it's criminal or not, if they want to find a way to go ahead and get to be ahead and become somebody because of status, they want to have status, they want to have attention, or they want to have, they want to help out others. There are a lot of cases where people are helping out others. They might do it nefariously, but I'd rather people do it the right way, right? But we need the system, okay, the system and the institutions. Remember, there's a lot of talk about systemic and institutional racism. But the difference is systemic and institutional, I get that part, but I would like to personally put it as systemic, the system, and the institution, the establishment, the elite establishment of media, our civic leaders, our social leaders, and others, those that have power, those that have access. They could offer, because they have what the have-nots do not have. Does that make sense? I talked about this on a couple of videos on my YouTube series when I'm not podcasting. You can find that at youtube.com/JBRASCO951. You can find it there, okay? Now, with that said, let me explain here. This is where everything comes down to. It's where the media is supposed to be, just like the radio airways. It's owned by the people. The media needs to be able to be a voice for the voiceless. Are they offering us that? And I'm going to say they don't. They fail to do that. The voice of the voiceless is online. This is why the digital disruption in all of our media, music, movies, TV, and radio, is so important. And I think it has definitely benefited everybody. The opportunity to put a podcast like this for myself, it's a great thing because I know what I would have to do to be able to get this kind of content out to this many people any other way. Without podcasting, the digital disruption, podcasting's not a thing. Blogging's not a thing. You could be your own journalist. You could be your own radio podcaster. You're a radio host. You could be your own podcaster. You could be your own entrepreneur. Yeah, all of that. There's lots of opportunities. And you just have to learn how to get there. Again, it's just like everything else. The opportunity is there, but you have to learn. You have to apply yourself as much as you can. And I'll tell you, even during this pandemic, I've taken so much time to harness my skills, my craft, improving my graphics, doing video editing, trying to perfect myself on that. So much more. And then marketing, advertising, and working on other things to put other side hustles together to get myself ahead. I've been working hard for it, especially when I have all this time to be at home to think and to really put a whole thought process to put this together. Now, I know other people don't have that option, right? There's a lot of resources that people don't have, but I would like to be the kind of person that offers that. I would love if I had. I'd like to go ahead and offer resources, but I don't want to give anybody a handout. I want to give people the tools, the means to get somewhere. One of the people I follow on YouTube, a responder, one of the commentators on YouTube, I love the analogy he puts out. You don't want to give somebody a fish when you can actually give a person to have a rod and reel so they can be taught how to catch a fish. Like I would rather have somebody learn a trade, learn a skill, or learn something so they can apply it and become really good at it and they can make money off of it, right? That's what I'd rather want, or be educated. But the truth is, are we getting educated well? That's another story for a longer subject, which I might do a YouTube video on. But again, when I'm not podcasting, I go there and I talk about some other areas that might not apply to this program. But now, I give my point here on the program here so that I can go ahead and get into tonight's content about the media, entertainment, and the culture and how they responded to a need for social change. And the need for social change has been triggered and has been set off because of the media executing the story of the murder of George Floyd. Regardless of what the story is, regardless of the case itself among the 4 officers, regardless of what the autopsy results from between the medical examiner and the private autopsy that was conducted by George Floyd's lawyer, without trying to put myself into the side of who is better than others, like trying to, judge the people that want to support Black Lives Matter, the ones that want to support all lives matter, the ones that support nothing. They don't have a voice. They don't want to say anything about it. They want to black themselves out. Regardless of what people say about this entire story and the fact that some people feel like they are afraid to say something. Well, it is what's going to be said. I mean, again, there is a propaganda that's being put out by the media, mainstream, elite, which is why the media is out there, but it's not in your traditional sources. Because the reason why, more than anything else, is they're corporate owned for the most part. How many of those corporations are minority owned? How many of those corporations have, not by way of affirmative action, but have a diversity of opinion, a diversity of thought, a diversity of management and leadership? Ask yourself that question. And of that diversity of management, leadership, opinion, thought, infrastructure, staff, support, of those people in that high end of power and diverse, are they actually the haves giving back to the have-nots? I see no. I mean, maybe sometimes they do, right? But more than not, there's a particular social narrative that is said to be in the best interest of people, but I don't know if that works for everybody. First of all, it's so hard for everybody to agree on something. But that's what the media is for. We're supposed to have biases. We're supposed to have opinions and editorials. But remember, more importantly, the media needs to go ahead and be able to be objective, old school news reporters. The facts on the ground, the story as it's happening. It doesn't happen on the networks, on cable news, and another doesn't happen on the newspapers either. Not so much. Especially when it's newspapers with a national focus. Okay? I want to take a story first of all as we get started. And by the way, before I get into this, all of the content here, I want to give you the heads up that I am going to run the second part of my interview with Kevin Goatee, who again is a comedian, actor, voiceover artist. We recorded this well into the start of the pandemic. Just to give you the heads up. You may remember I brought him on and did part one of my interview with him 2 weeks ago. And he is the CEO of Monkey Butt Productions. He hosts Watching Comics on Amazon Video, Amazon Prime, and also has another one titled Fantasy Football Jibber Jabber, which you can watch on YouTube and Facebook, and has a podcast titled Gutting the Sacred Cow. And hopefully he gets a chance to talk more about movies in that show, Gutting the Sacred Cow, because, unlike myself, I like movies, and I'm waiting for movie theaters to come back. It'll be nice to start seeing movies again, and hopefully about another month. And I think the first one I'm going to go look for is Tenet. That's where I'm going to go starting off. But there you go. Now, moving along into the stories, let's start off with a story that I saw from the World Economic Forum. I thought this was very interesting. In collaboration with Accenture, they put a white paper out titled The Media, Entertainment, and Culture's Industry's Response and Role in a Society in Crisis. I just want to talk about the overview real quick. So, the executive summary says, the media industry is going above and beyond its main role to inform, entertain, and connect society, but will need to be ready to face the lasting implications of COVID-19. Now, this is just COVID-19, but I want to just bring the point, a couple of things they bring about this that are important. One of the things they bring out as a heading is the trustworthiness of information is top of mind for consumers, and the responses in policy and execution of harmful content are key. Governments surpass media and NGOs in trust for the first time. Consumers expect business to put people before profits. Expect businesses to put people before profits. And employers are expected to look after their staff amid media industry furloughs and layoffs. By examining the relationship to customer loyalty and business performance and the importance of societal responsibility, we see that trust won now is a powerful asset. Now, they put that story on there, and then there's another part they bring up. Again, it's the relationship with society. They mention as well in their introduction, media's relationship with society can take a step forwards or backwards depending on how companies act. So they go through a whole story, and I put this into the description. You go and take a look for yourself. There's a lot of information to go through that I think would be really important to go and look at. So I would definitely go and take a look at it themselves. I'll see if I do another video on this just alone on a YouTube video. That's just too much to talk about here. So now, one of the other things is, in this story, it's also talking about, I want to just go through the highlights. Building trust and building back better. This story also mentions that trust in news and information matters. Media companies play a key role in limiting harmful content and managing the accurate dissemination of information. No. Limiting harmful content and managing accurate dissemination. No. Now, if you want to have an editorial view as to what you're going to be able to cover within a time frame, that's one story. But what we're looking at right now is this story is wrong because they're saying they need to limit harmful content. But you're not going to limit harmful content because it's available online. And people are going to be able to say what they want to say. You're not going to be able to stifle free speech, freedom of thought, freedom of opinion. And then they're talking about managing the accurate dissemination of information. Well, again, they're wrong because you can find it online. So if media feels like they want to do this, media companies want to do this, well, they're wrong. This is why they're out of touch. This is why they don't get the kind of coverage that they're supposed to. And this is the problem that they get. The pandemic was meant to be because people were in a crisis. And they were reliant on hopefully expecting and trusting that the media would do well for them and not offer them panic porn and give them legitimate information so that we know what the CDC, the NIH, and all these other agencies are telling us accurate information, that whatever stories on therapeutics and treatments and vaccines and what's being put out there. Well, what happened? The whole social distancing, well, that whole story about COVID-19 has blown up because now we have over 25 major metropolitan cities with thousands upon thousands of people not socially distancing, some without masks, at risk, right? You would think. So how good did the media do disseminating information, and how good did they do at limiting what was out there? What was this wonderful thing they said? Limiting harmful content. How well did he do that? A lot of residents in all these different states, as they reopened their economies, or they did not, or they decided to go ahead and put more forceful lockdowns in place, stay at home, shelter in place regulations, or continued them, people responded not well. So the media didn't necessarily do that well. They did not trust the consumers, the people that are watching the advertisers, the people that are supporting the advertisers, the people that are being counted into the ratings of that content, or clicking on that content, or watching that content online. They don't trust you. The media companies, the elite establishment, the platform press. That's a good point. Again, I have that in the description. You can definitely go and take a look at it for yourself. And all the stories you'll find at broadcasterspodcast.com. Please go ahead and take a look there, and you'll find all the stories that I talk about here on the show. And also you can find it on my Facebook page, facebook.com/King of Podcasts. Moving on. There's a story about the media industry's pre-existing conditions. Another story I want to take from Columbia Journalism Review, CJR. Excellent work. So again, same thing with COVID-19. The issues that are going on when it comes to where major media companies have made cuts. We talked about many of them. So the pandemic, in this story says, has dealt publishers a massive, unexpected blow. Industries across the economy are reeling right now. Still, the vulnerability of the news business is not entirely circumstantial. Prior assumptions for many outlets were dire enough for reasons unrelated to the coronavirus. In addition to local news outlets, digital disruptors who looked like the future at one point have struggled financially and have had to scale back their operations. So now they're talking about BuzzFeed, they're talking about Vice, among others. So whichever way you slice it, it's clear that the coronavirus didn't start the industry garbage fire as much as it threw accelerant on it. Kyle Pope, who's the editor and publisher of the Columbia Journalism Review, he wrote, quote, "The media industry, especially the local news business, was not very healthy going into this pandemic, and even larger digital outlets weren't very healthy going in. And I think it's going to prove just devastating." But then there's the underlying health conditions. Asserting that the coronavirus is killing our industry risks obscuring the deeper reasons for the malaise and letting those responsible for it off the hook. And we should remember, too, that cuts are always a choice. In this story, they mentioned that Vice Media had done everything we could to avoid layoffs, but the union representing company staff disputed that, claiming that management refused to consider alternative solutions, including work sharing and deeper cuts to executive salaries. Work share arrangements, such as the one implemented by the LA Times, can allow staff to claim unemployment benefits while retaining some pay. BuzzFeed is exploring the idea as well. Even when there are no good options on the table, some options remain better than others. Now, let's get into what's being said as well. News is essential. A reporter for News 12 on Long Island, New York, was harassed covering an anti-lockdown protest. Protesters chanted fake news is not essential. Interesting there. But again, these are the kind of things that are going on that the media is hurting right now. And that is because of a lack of trust. Because of what that story I just talked about before, about how they decided to, for the World Economic Forum, the idea that they wanted to go ahead and disseminate information and limit harmful content. Well, by doing that, they have failed. It shows in their revenue. It shows in laying off their staff. It shows in not being able to survive a pandemic. Because even that story from Columbia Journalism Review says they were already hurting before. Radio, in the same sense, hurting before the pandemic. And then what happens? Layoffs, cuts, lack of revenue. Radio as well. These media companies, they have to go and do what they do as corporations to cut their bottom line and to satisfy at the behest of their investors. But then again, are they serving the public interest? Are they the voice of the voiceless? The haves? Which I'm surprised they have anything, because a lot of companies are in debt, or a lot of companies are hurting. They're making a lot of people that had a job, that had status, into have-nots. So they're not helping in many different avenues. Multiple ways they're not helping. So we look at that part. Now, moving along. A story from CBS 17. This is a TV station WNCN serving Raleigh, North Carolina. They put a story out that is called Protests and Activism in the Social Media Era. So again, if the media, the establishment media companies, the elite establishment, if they're not doing the job, they've lost trust, and they're not able to support the resources needed and the staffing needed to go ahead and operate effectively, well, then social media is going to do the job for them. And then there's a point where social media also wants to limit harmful content and control the dissemination of information. And they're also looking to be exposed. Why is there now discussion by Congress to eliminate Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act? Again, I'm just making the point. I'm not trying to push the argument one way or the other, but there's a reason why we're at this point. If there's a limit of free speech, our First Amendment, there's a problem. And notice, every time the First Amendment is being affected, whether you like it or not, the people continue to speak. The people keep responding with their dollars. They keep responding with their engagement to what you're doing. So social media is where to go. So cell phone video of George Floyd's final moments are now the fuel to nationwide protests. Shared on social, the video quickly gained traction online, turning the world's eyes to the Minneapolis Police Department. Now, what has happened is the Minneapolis Police Department is about to be dismantled as a result. And we know that prosecution is underway for the 4 officers that were on scene during this murder. Now, again, they can say alleged murder because it hasn't been no convicted in court, but basically you can see it on camera. I mean, the facts show it's murder. Now, Mark Neal, professor of African American and Studies at Duke University, he said, quote, social media has empowered so many different communities to be able to tell their stories in ways that hadn't been able to do it before. The use of social media during protests ongoing now democratizes new coverage. He said it for every news coverage. Quote, We can have multiple counter narratives of folks capturing different perspectives and offering different perspectives that we hadn't seen historically in this country. He said those narratives include peaceful protests, protesters confronting bad actors, or interactions with police. Neil acknowledges there are limitations. He said there's always a chance for new technologies to be used for nefarious reasons. Well, again, causes can also have nefarious reasons as well. And the have-nots I've been talking about can also look to try to become the people that have by the way of nefarious reasons. That's just the normal way of life. Some people want to go the right way and some do want to do it the wrong way. You know, there's two ways to go. It's a fork in the road. Which side do you want to take to live your life? Sometimes you literally only get snippets. You see a moment, but you don't see what happens before that moment or after that moment. So again, that's why there has to be a certain responsibility attached to the folks who are doing the good work on the ground in terms of using social media and handheld digital devices to capture the moment, end quote. But that's because there are places where if you get to watch it live, I like live content. I like seeing real-time content in its full context, not snippets. It's important because we know, Professor Neal is absolutely right. The other part that you mentioned in the story is a Pew Research study found that half of Americans have used social media to engage in political or social-minded activities. It's a published study called Activism in the Social Age. They said social networking sites have become digital debate stages. And that's great. I really love that. I like debate and discourse. But I don't want what that other story said. I don't want the limiting of harmful content because I'm a Voltaire kind of guy. Voltaire, the Enlightenment age, the philosopher, he says, I might disagree with you, but I will fight for your right to disagree with you. And I live every day. That's First Amendment to me. That's free speech, freedom of thought, freedom of opinion. I don't want thought police. I don't want somebody curating what they think I should and should not know. We're adults. Okay? The story said it found most Americans think social can give people a voice. At the same time, it found many people also believe it can detract from important issues. Professor Neal also adds that there were 1 million tweets about Michael Brown's shooting. That was the person in the black male in Ferguson, Missouri, that was killed, that died at the hands of cops in his shooting before there was any primetime news coverage of his death. I think that set a template, if you will, for ways folks are using cell phones and handheld devices could, on the one hand, activate the attention of mainstream media, but more importantly, in the context of these protests we're seeing now, gives folks an on-ground perspective. He added the perspective enhances the overall understanding of an event and fills in the gaps. There you go. This is how things work. Professor Neal gives an excellent explanation of what's going on right now and what we're seeing on right now. Like I said, I'm watching on Twitch. I'm watching the Woke channel on Twitch and watching 8 different camera shots right now of all the protests and seeing everything that's going on in real time. And it's great to see because I can see everything that's going on in one shot. And there are a lot of channels like that. Or you can see them individually if you want as well. But seeing the multiple shots like this is something I didn't get to see before during the Ferguson shootings. You had to go from stream to stream. But now again, the full gamut is really great. Again, it's improvement of technology. The technology continues to make it even much more clear. And we're giving much more transparency as to what is going on. Love that story. Again, I had to go look at a TV station in Raleigh, North Carolina to find that story. Excellent work. Another story I want to look at is from dividedwefall.com. And the story is Ground News wants to empower judge media bias. Now, this particular app came across, and I want to point people out to it because I went ahead and downloaded this app today. And I bought the subscription for it. I think what they're doing right now is excellent work. And I want to recommend everybody to go and check this out for themselves. Please go and take a look at this article and look at and consider there's a free version of ground.news. And you can check it out for yourselves. So real quickly, the story of this is Harleen Cower. She's a co-founder of Ground News. It allows the discussion of the ability. It's the ability of modern technology to combat media bias. And media bias goes across the board, left, right, center. And we're seeing some sites that are actually trying to identify what stories are left, center, right. We're seeing more of that going on because people want to have the wide range of news. We're not, and see, here's the thing. No limiting of media, no dissemination, no limiting of harmful content. Because the limiting of harmful content is in the eye of the beholder. Beauty is not in the eye of the beholder. But beauty can be found in different forms. And people can feel anything's different and beautiful, right? Think about it like that. People's bodies, people's, their facial features, their attitudes, their personalities. People find different people attractive. The same thing applies to limiting harmful content. People that might think it's harmful might not think it's not. But it's perceived harm. Now, there's a difference between perceived harm and actual harm. What I don't want to have is something that will cause actual harm. That I agree with. And that is where the limitation starts and where it ends. So Ground News is an app that culls through more than 50,000 news sources to help news consumers combat misinformation and fake news. Ground News allows users to compare how media outlets with different political ideologies are covering stories. I love this story. I want to get into this a bit more because I actually did a couple of articles on this, but I'm going to go through all this coming up. This really looks great because they go into a story about facts or fake news. Again, I'm going to go through all this coming up, but I'm going to leave this here to go and look at for another time. I'm going to put that up as a story I want to go ahead and talk about on a future YouTube video because there's just so much to get into right there. I'll hold that right there for all. Now, so in the story, they talk about, it's a question and answer about how the story got started and all the things that were going on. The part I want to talk about is a section where they talked about the impact of media bias on our society. So a question that was asked was, why is it important to be exposed to different media perspectives? Harleen answers, there are a couple of reasons that our app tries to expose people to different perspectives. Firstly, if you're only listening to a single style or viewpoint, then you are potentially missing a lot of stories and information. Some media outlets refuse to cover specific stories, so you find a clear bias. For example, the right-leaning media may not include climate change stories, or left-leaning media may not cover immigrant crime news stories. We see that not just in the political bias, but on geopolitical agendas too. The Hong Kong protests get covered very differently throughout the world. It's essential to understand the bias and read different stories. Look at the way she said that. Mentions two polarizing subjects on both the left and right, and talks about the Hong Kong protests, which, are we even getting any stories about that from the establishment, from the media companies? Are they even talking about China or Hong Kong right now? As part of the coronavirus, are they even talking about China? No. In some cases, because of the narrative that's being put in place, financial or political, there's an agenda that's in place, a bias, if you will, where some people might be carrying water for China. And think about it. I don't disagree with that. Now, there's the next question about how do new technology and apps like Ground change that bias? And Harleen answers, I think we all want to reaffirm our biases. We try to surround ourselves with people who think similarly. It is not comfortable for us to talk to people who will have different opinions than us. So Ground News and Divided Fall show people that they can have disagreements and expand their social circles in a way that traditional media does not. I love this. Next question is, are you willing to talk about controversial issues with your friends, or do you always avoid it? Harleen answers, honestly, I find those conversations very uncomfortable, but I think there is legitimacy in having those discussions. It is essential to understand other people's points of view and have those conversations as opposed to avoiding it. Ultimately, it will expand your knowledge of other people and may expand your horizons as well. I love it. That's why I bought it. That Q&A, Harleen, you got a customer. Thank you very much. I'm going to try to find if it's. I got to go look if it's Harleen is. I need to go and find Harleen Cower and find out if I can get this person as a guest on the program, because I love what's being said right here. And by the way, Harleen Cower was previously a NASA space engineer, and now she's a news entrepreneur. I love what she's doing here. So I absolutely want to go ahead and talk to her about ground news. If I can get her on, I just made a request to go ahead and try to get her on the program. Let's cross fingers and toes, huh? So great story right there. Moving along, another story I took from Variety.com, which is an opinion editorial, from Claudia Eller. She wrote, reflecting diverse voices starts in the newsroom. So I want to hear what she says about this. So they mentioned the story about a black journalist with Variety named Angelique Jackson. And she, along with other reporters, had thoughts on how they could better inform their coverage to convey them to the readers. And Jackson said, quote, having to speak up in front of a newsroom of your mostly white colleagues and editors is a very scary thing to do. Having to point out blind spots in the work of well-intentioned and more experienced reporters is uncomfortable, but it is also an opportunity for me to effect change in our coverage and in our industry. I'm fortunate to be able to share my voice in a way where I feel safe and heard, and as a result, I'm able to use my voice to amplify other black voices, to help frame the narrative to remind people reading or watching why black people are standing up in the first place. End quote. Great. So there's more that's brought into the story, mentioning about there's been a lot of discussion both in our organization and I'm sure elsewhere about how the mainstream media is too heavily focused on the violent aspects of the protest, which have been disrupted by police violence and opportunistic looting, rather than highlighting the reasons why all the peaceful demonstrators are standing up for justice and police brutality against black people. But honestly, those of us who are seeing the shocking images on social media of police brutality being played out before our very eyes have a hard time turning away from the violence that has ensued. The explosion of widely felt anguish over the death of George Floyd clearly underscores a deep-rooted rebellion against the systemic racism that has existed in our country for centuries and is evidenced in our recent history. Now, she mentions a lot of victims that were part of this. That's part of the narrative. But again, I don't believe it's necessarily racism. Again, I think it's status. I believe there is something that is systemic and institutional. But again, I identify it differently. That's where I go with this argument, this discussion. So there's more to be said, but again, I put that story out there for everybody to go and check out for themselves. Now, let's move along to another story that came out here that is a response. We've talked extensively about the media so far on the program. I mean, hell, I spent an hour on it, almost. So, I mean, I've been there. But here's what I want to go along and move along with now, is the story of, well, really talk about Blackout Tuesday. The response by the entertainment sector and the culture. So, in terms of the people that watch and consume media, which is music, movies, TV, and radio, and those who are watching it from both sides of the radio, both sides of your phone, both sides of your television, right? Both sides of the screen, if you're talking about the movie screen. So here's what happened. Variety also reported about how Spotify, SiriusXM, and many major corporate brands observed moments of silence in their George Floyd tributes. Nickelodeon did an 8-minute, 46-second moment of silence to commemorate, to observe and acknowledge the death of George Floyd. So Spotify had an 8-minute, 46-second track of silence on select playlists and podcasts. SiriusXM, at 3 p.m. on June 2nd, silenced all music channels for 3 minutes. And the music industry over the past weekend rallied around Blackout Tuesday, which was designed as a disruption to the work week. The initiative encompassing the hashtag "The Show Must Be Paused," was created by Atlantic Records executive Jamila Thomas and Platoon's Brianna Angemang. So a lot of companies were part of it. Sony Music, Amazon Music. And then I'll say again, if you knew a company or if you knew an influencer, if you knew a celebrity, almost all of them put up something, possibly a black square on their Instagram channel, or put on a nose through their Twitter feed, through social media, or made videos to comment. All that was going on. And so across the board, we saw all of this. Now, in the story, there was some criticism, some blowback. So let's talk about that. A couple of stories that actually brought up that part. One, Variety then reported a couple days later that Black Tuesday posts get backlash for drowning out Black Lives Matter information. So first of all, the Variety op-ed mentions that the campaign was hasty and more than a little haphazard. But the use of the Black Lives Matter hashtag by Blackout Tuesday participants has ended up inadvertently suppressing information about protests, fundraisers, and other information important to the movement. Many social media users have seen their feeds filled with black squares and the hashtag, which a number of people seem to be associated with the Blackout Tuesday campaign. Then there's another story that came out about it. So another story that came out about this as well comes from vulture.com. Now isn't the time for more music industry silence. More music industry silence, let's say. So the music industry halted normal business in solidarity with black activists and innovators in lockstep with the show must be paused. Okay. Thing as well, which I want to make a point about when it came to the debate and discourse being started, okay, was WPHT, New York City, FM radio, Power 105.1, their morning show, which is syndicated around the country, The Breakfast Club, hosted by Charlamagne the God. They had Hall of Fame radio host Rush Limbaugh on for a half-hour conversation about black activism, police brutality, and white privilege. Rush Limbaugh stresses anger about Floyd's death, but criticized violence and destruction of property that has broken out at many protests. Charlamagne the God, who is the author of Black Privilege, Opportunity Comes to Those Who Create It, talked about how the tragedy in Minneapolis fits a pattern of unfair policing and justice system malfeasance. Rush said white privilege and white supremacy are constructs created by Democrats and questioned black voters' loyalty, echoing language internet conservatives used to try and convince people of color to switch parties, this time to an audience of predominantly young black and brown listeners. Yes, listeners were frustrated, but the Breakfast Club decided to go ahead and put that conversation out there. And it was taped in advance. And they talked about some of the things that were done when it comes to how the approach by the music industry was with this. Apple Music disabled its browse function for the day, replaced it with a lengthy set of motivational songs from black artists. Tidal promoted a series of protests highlighting rousing speeches, spoken word pieces of music. The peaceful protest playlists cherry-picked classic songs of outrage, but kept things cute, avoiding the florid history of volatile rap songs about police brutality. Dead Presidents is Bigger Than Hip Hop made the cut, but the group's more pointed police state didn't. Public Enemy was represented with 911 as a joke, but NWA's Fuck the Police was nowhere in sight. Dr. Dre's The Day the N-Words Took Over, I'm not going to say the word, or Ice Cube's We Had to Tear This Motherfucker Up, spoke to the climate of outrage during the LA riots. It's not hard to hear peaceful protest as a veiled statement Jay-Z won't spell out, although to be fair, he's one of the signees of a full-page print ad calling for justice for George Floyd that has been published in newspapers today. Now, also, I learned about the fact that Jack Dorsey is now giving to Colin Kaepernick's foundation supporting people of color. Spotify announced it would tack 8.5 minutes of silence on the end of podcasts and playlists in honor. And for the most part, any major corporate brand that you could think of put put something out there. And I saw Instagram influencers. I saw people of every different part of reaching an audience or reaching a consumer base. They all responded, most of them all in the same vein. So the lesson for the consumer watching all this unfold is not to assume that just because people and our publications and our businesses are involved in a culture, that their presence in it commutes a handle on the issues that inform it. As we watch countless respected figures and beloved organizations face plant on easy matters of social justice, as we get a more sophisticated dialogue on police brutality from Ben and Jerry's than we have from people like Trina, Virgil Abloh, Ben Baller, T.I., and The Dream, public figures in the hip-hop and streetwear communities of different sorts who have all come under fire in the last week to one extent or another for criticizing rioters, damaging and looting storefronts before touching on the issues, animating the behavior and the sense however right or wrong it is. Okay. So again, there's no perfect answer to this. But again, this is an issue that has not been resolved. The systemic, institutional problem. Again, if it's systemic and institutional, there's no quick way to fix it. There's no solution. But there are a lot of concessions being made and a lot of capitulation, whether good or bad, that's being done to pacify and atone, if you will, or act as apologists. Again, the word privilege gets put around. And the privilege idea comes from the haves and the have-nots. And I do not believe personally that color is the main construct. I think it's status. I think it's what people have versus what people have not, which is what my point has been all across the board. Okay, a couple other things I wanted you guys to get into real quickly. We're going to go into the Kevin Goatee interview. One more thing I want to just bring up real quick. Oh, actually, a couple of things. Here we go. So in Hollywood, when they're restarting production, I saw that Mission Impossible is actually going to be coming back on board. And so they're going to start doing exterior scenes to get the production back up starting in September, which is great. We're hearing word that some movie theaters are going to start opening right now. Cinemark is looking to go and open their theaters in July. And AMC theaters, even though we're hearing the story that there's substantial doubt that they might be able to survive the coronavirus, you know, the stock market, which I bought stock in AMC right now, AMC Theaters, AMC Entertainment Group. And so far, the stock market doesn't feel that way because they have not dropped the stock off. It's not been sold off in a big fire still. And there's only word. Like we know next week, the earnings numbers for second quarter for AMC theaters are coming up. But again, I don't think it's going to affect so much where people are not going to be able to go ahead and see AMC survive without somebody buying them out possibly. But again, they have done what they need to do in order to keep themselves going through the end of the year. They found enough credit to keep themselves open for the end of the year. But again, it all matters as to when the pandemic ends and all these different cities and all these different major metropolitan cities open back up to get their movie theaters back up so they can get movies back out. Because movies are ready to be exhibited. That's not the problem. The problem is we just need the movie theaters to be open. So the movie industry, the studios are already ready to go and promote and put movies out as early as July 1st. Greenland, I think the movie with the Russell Crowe's production company is behind. Tenet's coming up and a bunch of other movies are coming up as well. The box office will start back up. And I think we're going to eventually start seeing some people coming back. There's going to be some big movies that will come back that will get people back on board. Now, looking at what movies are going to be coming out that will get people back to the theater, well, that's the very important question. What do we have coming up in front of us? Let me go to thenumbers.com, the-numbers.com, which will tell me everything about what's going on coming up. So the release schedule looks like this. Now, there are a lot of virtual and limited films that are being made available throughout the month of June. When we get to July is when we start seeing movies coming out. By this point, we should start seeing movies. So Unhinged, we'll see coming out. That'll be for wide release. And that's a pretty big movie. It's a movie that put a budget down of $33 million. So we got that going for us. Russell Crowe, excuse me, that's the movie he's in, Unhinged. I thought it was Greenland, but I was wrong. So yeah, Russell Crowe stars in the movie. It's again got a decent budget, and that's debuting July 1st. Wide release. Tenet comes out July 17th. So there'll probably be some movies that will not get a chance to get moved forward to get people out there to go ahead and watch, in terms of a lot of movies being available in the movie theaters by the time the movies start back up. But we'll start seeing them up. Tenet comes out July 17th. And then the movies start coming back up. Then we see Mulan that will come out July 24th. So some pretty big movies come out at the end of July. And that will get people to show up. I really believe that. A lot of limited movies are coming out. Maybe those are going to get a chance to get to be seen. The Empty Man is coming out August 7th. The SpongeBob movie, also August 7th. The following week, Wonder Woman 1984, scheduled for August 14th. There's a Walt Disney movie called The One and Only Ivan. Bill and Ted Face the Music will be wide released August 21st. Antebellum, August 21st. Let Him Go, also August 21st. So basically, August is when we start seeing multiple wide releases of movies. So the movie releases will start coming up in August. Now, could we see theaters in New York possibly get themselves started? I don't know. But a lot of major metropolitan cities are going to be opened up to be able to see movies at. So where I'm at, by the time July and August roll around for the movies, Phase 2 will be in place for the state of Florida. So I'll get a chance to start watching movies as they start coming back out. So by the time July 17th comes out, that's the first movie. If I can watch July 1st and watch Unhinged, I might go see it. I haven't seen a lot about the trailer yet. I haven't been into the movies for a while to watch it. But again, and then you're looking in September, A Quiet Place 2 will then get released. Original is going to be released in March. Monster Hunter gets released. The Conjuring, another sequel of that movie. Candyman's coming out, which is a remake. And so much more. I mean, this is what's going to happen. We're going to get a lot of movies coming out right away. And there are movies going on that are coming out wide release all the way to the end of the year. And hopefully that will get people started. We're going to get some real diverse offerings. That's one thing we're going to get. But we're going to get some pretty big movies that are going to be made available still going into the reopening of movie theaters. So AMC Theaters, I still think has a chance. I'm still betting on it. I'm still investing in it. So I'm not bailing out yet. Unless it goes really south, and then I'll have to find a way to just sell out. But what can I do? Now, one of the stories I want to talk about to wrap things up here: paper scripts will go away in Hollywood. Plan to start reproduction. So that's one of the things we're talking about when the movie theaters come back. Vanity Fair put the story out, and they said that whenever possible, use of paper will be minimized. Alternatives such as electronic scripts and electronic sign-in, sign-out should be explored. There are expected ideas of increased distancing between workers, use of masks, other personal protective equipment, sweeping sterilization of commonly touched objects. This is one of the surprising common sense changes that will have to be implemented to ensure the show can go on. So again, we've talked about the 22-page white paper proposal from the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, hoping to get the go-ahead to resume work within this massive sector of the economy. We'll see what they do. Vanity Fair reported that crews are being divided into modular workforces. Construction crews will work, then leave. Lighting technicians will arrive, then leave. Actors and camera crews will do their jobs and never cross paths with the other teams. Staggering cast and crew call and wrap times will limit the number of individuals arriving to and departing from work simultaneously. And then there's preparation and pre-production and development, whenever possible. Moving to visual writer rooms. So when virtual writer rooms. Virtual writers' rooms are not possible, maintaining 6 feet of distance, using face coverings, and performing hand hygiene before and after the meeting. And also minimizing the use of paper. So all this right here is being considered when people get back to go ahead and do content creation on the movie set. Also for television studios, they're going to probably have to go into this very soon. So there you go. And we'll see how that all works out. And I'm going to think it's going to happen for a while, 6 months, maybe up to a year. But eventually we'll get out of this. I really feel that. But again, we're all going to have to wait and see what happens after the fact to see if we don't get another second wave. People feel comfortable. They feel like that maybe if there's no vaccine that comes around that will be safe enough to use, because we've seen other viruses come and go without a cure, without a vaccine, an ultimate cure-all, excuse me. But if there are therapeutics out there and we're able to go and treat it better, then we can move on with regular life without living in fear. And there you go. I like all of that. Now, we're going to leave it there. Time for me to go move along to my interview with Kevin Goatee, which I like I said, I apologize for not being able to put this out last week, but I wanted to get onto all these stories because there's so much going on. I know, a long show tonight, folks. I hope you appreciate it. And normally I don't put them more than an hour, but there was just so much to cover. And yeah, I could have put some of this into other content, but I think I really only put the essential, because I could have done a 3-hour show with all that I have in front of me, but I don't want to do that. I'm going to take some stuff and relegate it to the YouTube channel when I'm not podcasting, which you can find at youtube.com/JBRASCO951. Check that out. Again, also, please go ahead and help me out in my work, because I also need to be crowdfunded. I could really use your help to fund this program, to keep putting money into it so I can make it even bigger and better. I'd love to be able to go move this website over to a WordPress site, to an actual site, so I can put more things into the program and do that for you. I'd love to be able to do that. So if you can help me out with that, I would really appreciate it. Please go to kingofamazon.com. Kingofamazon.com. Go through my special Amazon link so you can buy whatever you buy for Amazon. I've been buying a bunch of things for Amazon. I actually bought for myself a new ottoman to go along with the chair that I use for the studio. So when I get done and I don't want to watch TV, I've binge watching Riverdale right now. Figured, why not? I can go ahead and move my computer away from my chair, put the ottoman up, pop it, and watch. And good to go. Amazon Fire Stick, I got that plugged in. Love it. I'm having to get my renewal of my Amazon Prime subscription. I got that coming up. And also Amazon Prime Day is coming up. They just announced they're going to have a new date for it. So I'll tell you about that coming along. And I'll make sure all of you know to go to kingofamazon.com so you can take a part of that. Anyway, time to move along to part 2 of a really great interview I had with comedian, actor, and voiceover artist Kevin Goatee here on the Broadcasters Podcast. Enjoy. But now here's the thing. So Hollywood is going to come back. Not only, and I don't know how much of Hollywood you deal with it yourself, but it's going to come back to delayed releases. We already know that, number one. Second, nobody's talking about the labor strife, because everybody right now, it's a whole labor union thing going on, from the producers, TV directors, to the movies, to the writers, to the talent agents, to the actors. It's all coming up to a run right now, and the coronavirus is going to fuck it all up. Let's just say that. So do you think you'll be able to keep going to the movieplex regardless of what's out? Would you still put yourself out there regardless and just say, you know what, even if the movie is still shit, look, we're not getting the greatest of the greatest now, but it's not going to stop you from going to the theater.
Sure it is. I'm not going out and paying to see dog shit. I would not. If we were in a world of bloodshots, I mean, The Hunt was okay, but I wouldn't pay $15 to go see it by itself. Nope.
Well, the thing was, I only do it because I got, like I said, an unlimited pass. So basically, after I pay $20 a month, 50 cents to go ahead and pay on the app to go ahead and order the ticket. So that's why I did Bloodshot, because what else are we going to do? And I figured, it's a Vin Diesel movie. How bad can it be? And now I can say it was a shit.
Are you fucking serious? How many Vin Diesel movies are good? You're playing against the
Triple X.
Logic.
I like Triple X.
Triple X was awful. I rewatched that just not even 3 days ago. That was fucking trash. Awful.
Yeah, but it's like Bang Bang Shoot 'em Up. It's not the best, I know.
It was so gut-wrenchingly bad. And I actually put a Facebook post up there, and I actually got more likes than I really expected. I put like, ha, 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 I can't believe I just got up and paused Triple X to go get a drink. Like I'm going to miss anything important. God, I'm literally losing it. Like, Triple X was trash. Maybe besides the fact, and first of all, the Fast and Furious films, there are a couple that are, the first one's good. The fifth one is very good. Uh-huh. But then they lose me after that here and there. I mean, I'll watch them all when they come on Netflix, but I sure as hell was not going to go pay to see that new in the theater. Maybe I would have snuck in, and after, maybe, okay, I would have seen it after I paid to go see the new Bond film.
Right.
And snuck for Fast 9. But I would not have paid for it out of my own pocket and just walked out when I was done and not suck on anything else. That's no way.
No, I don't. I get where you're coming from. Hey, obviously, we definitely have different. We have probably some different tastes, and there's probably some movies we're going to agree on, and that's okay. Because I'm like, my thing is sometimes also I don't mind like watching a good train wreck too, because sometimes those are kind of funny to watch. But then again,
I'm not paying to watch train wrecks. I'll watch them on Netflix or I'll watch them somewhere else. But I'm not going to get my car, waste gas, maybe go out and get to. Once in a while, get the food in the theater, waste money on that, waste money on a ticket just because it's a train wreck and I might hate watch it. Nope.
No, well, if you're paying for it, that's one thing. But like I said, I'm only doing it because I can get it on the cheap after I've already paid $20 for it. So like I will just cram in movies as much as I can. So we're seeing now, we were just talking about the fact that movies like Bloodshot, The Hunt, Lovebirds with Kamal Najani and Issa Rae, that's like the new comedy that I was really looking forward to seeing in the theater. Looked kind of funny. And that's going to Netflix now instead of going out theatrical release. So this is a question. Like, if people choose more to stay home for their movies, do you think that's going to put a big dent on the comedy movies? Like, because here's the thing. I don't know how you feel about when you see your comedy movie and it's like, there's certain movies that'll make me laugh anyway, but I feel like you need the audience to kind of be laughing along. You need a laugh track. And we've been programmed to that shit.
I might be, I guess I'm different than you. It'll hit me. The way, if it hits me, it hits me. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I don't need to go there. Like I said, I've seen a ton of films. Great. I can go see, I see every Star Wars film opening night at, whenever, 10 o'clock, whenever they first start firing them out. The nerds are fine because they keep quiet. As soon as those lights hit, you can hear a pin drop. But I have no problem. I love being by myself in there. I don't, I think Avengers didn't have that many people both opening days. I don't need a laugh track. If it's funny, it'll get a reaction on me. If it's not, then it dies on the vine.
Cut and dry, man.
Yeah, I don't need to be surrounded by people. They just annoy me. Like I forgot what was that? Damn it! What was that one that Soderbergh did with Daniel Craig? There was a redneck version of Ocean's 11 where they robbed the racetrack.
Logan Lucky.
It was terrible.
Logan Lucky.
Yeah, it was awful. And I sat next to this guy.
I like that too.
I hated it. It was bad. It was so boring.
Like it was NASCAR Ocean's 11, which Ocean's 11, not did you like Ocean's 11?
I love Ocean's 11 and I love Ocean's 13, but Ocean's 12 stinks. 11 and 13 are great, maybe because I have a hard-on for Vegas. But anyway, in the theater at Logan Lucky, this fucking guy 4 seats away, he was doing like almost a, ha, yeah, that's good. Or, ha, he said cow poop. Shit like that. This is why I fucking hate going to the movies. Unless it's, again, early and not many people are there.
I mean, I'm sure I could throw a couple of movies just from the last year that were absolutely, that we could probably agree on wholeheartedly. Listen, here's the gauge. What did you think of Joker?
Loved it.
Okay, loved it. Best movie last year, hands down. That's where I was with that. So at least we got that to go work off of. Something to agree on. And that's okay. I don't know if this would be good for a podcast. If we have two differing opinions like this and just bickering back and forth like it's Crossfire or something like that. That's an old show. That's an old reference. Sorry about that. But
Crossfire and CNN, I got it.
Well, some people, it's like, oh, what the hell is that? It's like, it's an old show. Oh, sorry, guys. Google it, okay? Now, what I also wanted to make mention of, and, a lot of credit for this, because I love voiceover work. In radio, I mean, that's the one thing for me. It's I do like somebody who does good voiceover work, and I got to hear some of your stuff. Really good stuff. Nice, nice, natural flowing stuff. And now you did Trident Gum, you did Muscle Applesauce, HSBC Bank, American Express, hell of a good dip, and Auto Trader. So, talk to me how you fell into that line of work, and how busy does it keep you now, especially with this? What's the revenue stream looking like from that?
Well, it's a lot of questions. And you used the right word, fell into it. I fell into this. When I started comedy, I guess my first couple of years, people would say, hey, man, you've really got a good voice. You ever think about doing voiceover? I go, nope, never. Wow. And it took me, I did a show with another comic. I'll never forget, we're at the Essex Street Station, Lower East Side in the city. waiting for the F train. And he was another guy. Hey, man, you've got a really good voice. Did you ever think about doing voiceover? I got, you're like the fourth person or whatever it was to tell me that such. And he said, well, look, I got a guy that I go through, and he coached me. He did my reel, and he's a gay guy who is insanely opinionated, and he is a no bullshit artist, and he will not take your money if he thinks you suck. Like he's legit on the up and up. And he said, just give him a call, talk it out, see what you think. If you suck, he'll let you know, and you can just throw this down the drain and never think about it again. Or this may be something where you may want to pursue it. I said, all right, what the hell? No harm in a phone call. Call up the guy, talk things out. He's like, yeah, come on over to my place. I've got a studio in my apartment. Did a few lines and went through a few read-throughs. He's like, man, Tomas, my buddy, he goes, he's right. He's like, you've got something. This is good. So he did coaching. We did read-throughs. And he taught me how to start getting on. And then I had a few friends who worked for freelance agencies who they were kind enough to refer me to their agency. And then they added me. And then that's how you get commercials. You get sent on auditions. And right now it's what's going on. The microphone I'm talking to you on is my voiceover mic. And they send us auditions at home now, which is a lot better than going to an audition room and waiting with other people and just killing out an hour or two of your day. Where they send you an audition at home. Hey, here's a tone. Here's the audition. Here's how much it pays. Go. Due by 12 o'clock tomorrow or whatever. Go. And that's how it's done now with coronavirus. So that's a brief.
Now, are you listed with any agencies? Do you have like a website for the voiceover work at all? I mean, I know that on your website you have a clip reel in there, but is there any other spots you have where people can kind of see the range of what you do?
My website's pretty much the only way. I guess if you go on the other, my agency websites, BFA and, does he even have a website? Brandon Cohen.
Okay.
You could find it there, but what you're going to find there is what you're going to see on my website anyway. So same thing.
If your rates are not that bad, I might hire you for a few projects if that's all right. It's
more than all right. As long as the rates are all right.
No, because you got it, man. Like, and it is honestly, it's a talent. If you have that. I mean, I'm just trying to get myself into, getting more projects outside of what I'm doing for my own work. But I'd love to be able to get out there more and get some more voiceover work. I mean, I know some people do well with it. I mean, obviously, why are actors and actresses doing it for like big dealers anyway? It's good stuff, and I imagine it keeps you busy. I mean, is it pretty good workload? I mean, I would say in a month. I mean, how much of your time do you think you consume yourself on doing voiceover work?
When I started with Brandon Cohen, he's done. It's insane how much work I've had since joining him. And I think that was the new year. I mean, I can look at my look at my sent email. I mean, I there are days where he'll send like 3 a day.
Wow.
To auditions, and it's. I was in Aruba a month ago. In early mid-February, and I was doing a bunch. He probably sent like 6 my way. I had to spend like 2 or 3 hours in my hotel room underneath covers doing auditions for him while I was out there. Instead of being out in 85, 90, 85 degrees and sunny every day, I was doing that in my hotel room for 2 hours and wasting that time. Wasting. I didn't get the job, so there. But anyway, yeah, I've been kept super busy. I did, I don't know how many yesterday. I think 2 or 3 yesterday. I probably, on average, 6 to 10 auditions a week.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. No, and I'll tell you, that's multitasking. When you have what you're doing with the podcast and what you're doing with your stand-up, all that multiple revenue streams, utility players. I can appreciate people that are able to go and do that much. And it's the same thing when I see actors and actresses that are going into production and directing and just, learning the trades behind the scenes, just getting themselves involved. I love that kind of stuff. And for me, that's what I always want to do, is be able to engage and attach myself in those new skill sets all the time. Just put that tool belt nice and fat. Now, let's talk about watching comics, because then you also do this show for Amazon Video. Or Amazon Prime. So it's a show where intermediate stand-up comedians vie to win a spot on a showcase at Gotham Comedy Club in New York. So Here's the thing now. At this point, what are the things that you see from all the people that you judge that a stand-up needs these days to make the cut to be a headliner or good enough to get a quality Netflix or Comedy Central special?
You just said a lot there. I forgot what your question was.
Well, I mean,
Sorry.
just what makes the cut? Like, what are if there's a couple of traits that you think a comedian should have that makes the cut? Does it need to be new material? Does it need to be just, delivery? Like, what are the things that makes a good comedian?
It's a perfect recipe of everything. It really is. Let's be honest. Funny is top heavy. Funny is 85%. Can I appreciate the technicality of a joke and the nuance and the setup and the cleverness and smart writing? Of course. And I want to see all that and everything. And I try and do that with my own jokes. But if someone is not the most technically superior joke constructor or writer, but they're funny as fuck, yeah, that's gonna easily trump the mechanics that of having those, that the writing or the setup or the structure of the joke. Again, some people are just so very simplistic in their delivery and style with the sledgehammer punchline or idea. They're going to win every time, and it's just even better. And you can appreciate even more when it's that sledgehammer joke and it's delivered in such a pristine vehicle. And I'll give you an example. Like David Tell's my favorite. Why? Because he's hilarious, most importantly, and he's filthy, and he gives you things that no one can ever think of it. Like the best stand-up album, period, stop, no argument allowed, is his first one called Skanks for the Memories. And he said, like, let's say you're out with your buddies the other night, one night, right? You decided to go out and get shit-faced and celebrate like someone just passed the postal exam. Like, who the fuck thinks that? It's hilarious. Or he goes, I was watching my cousin breastfeed for a couple of bucks. Again, who the fuck thinks that? Hilarious. And it's just, another one I just never makes me, I always piss my pants. He goes, I don't understand these people who use, air fresheners. What was I'm going to butcher it. He goes, what happens? You shit your pants when someone scares the hell out of you. And he goes, it smells like lemons and assholes in your apartment. Now, I know that sounds like the title of the next Harry Potter book, but it's not Lemons and Assholes. Again, who the fuck thinks like that? And it's so smart and so just precise. There's not an ounce of fat on that joke. That sword is as razor sharp as any katana that any ninja would use.
Wow.
Period.
You have me as skanks for the skanks for the memories.
I'm telling you, man, I have turned on I don't know how many people to that album, and people who know, or even people who are not even in comedy. Like I turned one of my best friends onto that. I burned the CD. I go, I'm not going to ruin this for you. Listen on the way home. He called me an hour later, and he drove back to my place, and he's like, Jesus Christ, man, I almost drove the road 4 times, laughed my balls off, and he turned on like 4 of his friends to that, and he put it on the car for road trips. Like that's how. That CD is, that album is, that again most normal people don't know exist, and shame on them.
One of my personal favorites, I'll say, and you could bash me off for this because we have some we don't agree on everything, and that's okay. One of my favorite CDs was Pablo Francisco's "Knee to the Groin."
You're right. I am gonna make fun of you.
Wow.
I'm just kidding. I never heard it. I'm just teasing. I've never heard it.
I would recommend it. The funniest shit.
Right.
It's the guy that does he's the guy that does the movie trailer voice. Pablo Francisco.
Don Fontaine.
Right. That's the guy that does it in a world. Right. He does that voice for all that stuff. Right. And he's great. Because he's like he's a mimicry. Not what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, he does the voices. There you go. He's like a Caliendo type.
Real fast, I'll give you a twofer since you just said this. Do you ever see the film In a World?
No.
It's about voiceover, and Lake Bell plays like a voiceover artist.
Oh.
And the In a World guy he dies. He died a while ago.
Yeah,
and they're trying, her and like a few other people are trying to go for that, where they get the In a World gigs, and it's all them trying to vie for it and get the coveted movie trailer In a World role. It's a real good film. Really good film.
I want to look for that. Damn. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for the
You'll have to break your no Netflix rule on this one, I think.
Okay. Well, because you don't want to have everybody's going to go and come left and right and say, "Oh, we got to watch this. You got to watch this. You got to watch this."
No. Read my tweets and everything. I am right. Other people maybe sometimes, but I am right. I just say it with the most level of contemptness I can muster up in one sentence.
Well, okay, so at Kevin, Gootee, where else can we find you? So this website also, kevingoatee.com, correct?
Correct. You mentioned before Watching Comics, seasons 1 through 8 on Amazon Prime right now. So if you have Amazon Prime, it's free. No better way to binge watch. Every season's about an hour and a half, hour and 45. So it's like watching a film. You can catch me gutting the sacred cow, Apple, Spotify, Google Play, Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. Did I say Spotify? If not, well, Spotify. And again, if you like movies, if you like stand-up comedy, Kevin Israel, co-host with me. He's funny. It's just two comics who invite their comic friends on, or non-comic friends. Actually, we're going to have Scott Farrell from CBS Sports Show.
Oh, yeah.
He knows how to be the man. We need the man.
Whoa. Yeah.
Yeah. Shot in a beer. I did his show in December, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to do your show. I had John Fugelsang on.
Oh,
Sirius.
yeah.
Yeah, Fugelsang did Gone with the Wind. I had Jude Angelini, also from Sirius. He was also on Jenny Jones, if you remember that show.
Oh, I remember Jenny Jones.
Jude did Birdman, and I had a few. I'm very cool with a lot of the people on Compound Media. That's Anthony Cumia's network.
Oh, yes.
I had Bill Schultz come in. Bill's become a good friend of mine. Bill's awesome. He did Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I'm on the morning show that he does a lot. I do it like once a month with his co-host Joanne Noshisinski, who did Grease in our second most recent episode.
Right.
So yeah, gutting the sacred cow. If you like movies, if you like stand-up comedy, if you like guys not doing this typical circle jerk discussion of films, if you want to hear people try and argue points about some of our most beloved and successful and acclaimed films, this is your podcast, guys. Just make sure you subscribe, like, and share it, because that's how we get along in this world. And fantasy football jibber jabber. I didn't really talk much about that, but that's okay because it's not really football season. So that's where we do a fantasy football advice show mixed in with gambling, where I went 63% against the spread last year.
There you go.
Again.
Now, how high would you go and draft Tom Brady if you had a chance?
I will not draft Tom Brady. Not because I hate the Patriots or he's not a Patriot anymore, right?
Well, no, that's what I'm saying, because he's a Buck now.
I just don't trust a guy who is short-arming throws his last year or two and couldn't air out the big one. Now, did he have the weapons he does now with Tampa? No. But I tell you what, I take that back. I would take him as a backup.
Well, because I'm just saying.
For a bye-week quarterback, or if I really, really waited late, if I just stockpiled running backs and wide receivers, and he was out there, but I'm not saying this. I'm not taking him before the 10th round at all. No way. I wouldn't take him by the 12th round. I'm not taking a 43-year-old quarterback next year. No. He'd be a backup for me. That's it.
Interesting. Well, I'm a Buccaneers fan. I'm hoping for the best, but I wouldn't even pick him past like 6th round, something like that myself. I totally agree.
I mean, as a Bucs fan, what do you think? I say you were 7-9 last year with a decent defense.
But fucking Winston was the cancer for 5 years, man.
No, I know. I'm not arguing, but I'm saying I think
they almost kept that guy.
Much better. That's a listen. You have the Saints who are going to win division again.
Yeah,
Carolina is going to stink, and Christ, who's in it? Atlanta, who will be okay.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say horrible.
I'll probably sweep them again. I don't know. They're in a rough spot, man.
They always had. They got rid of a lot of dead weight. They've got money. I don't know. I wouldn't say that. Listen, I think the Bucs can easily be 8-8, maybe 9-7, and that's it. 9-7 pretty much is the ceiling. 10-6 would be. You would blow Arians if you can get a 10-6 year out of them. Not Arians. What am I saying? Yeah, I'm right. Arians.
Yeah, Arians. Yeah, well, because he likes his old quarterback.
10-6.
He likes his old far quarterback. That's why he's like Gruden in the same way too. So
he loved Carson Palmer forever and a day. I know.
Oh my God! I was like, and I was waiting for him to go and do something like that. But look, I get the credit. All right, let's see. He tried to go with Wilson. He thought, okay, and then of course, then we find out Winston was fucking blind all this time. I'm like, great. He go get some LASIK surgery in the offseason. Like, okay.
Wait. He was blind. Yeah, he had cataracts or something, or something.
His eyesight was bad. He had LASIK surgery over the offseason.
This current offseason,
yes. He had LASIK
That's cool.
surgery.
Why wait till your walk year to figure that out, dummy?
Oh, we only paid you $30 million a year to go ahead and throw. That's why he was throwing bad. And now I'm waiting to see. But here's the funny part: like, nobody's wanting to pick him now. Nobody's looking to pick him now.
No. They're going to take him. They're going to take him for a song. For as a backup, maybe backing up Cam somewhere, wherever Cam lands.
Right.
He'll get a job. He definitely will get a job. That's for sure. I'm more surprised Marcus Mariota got a job in Vegas.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Surprised about that.
About what that's saying.
Because it wasn't going to cost as much, where Winston was,
I just saw recent pictures.
Mariota got benched less than halfway through the year, but he'll get a job. I would be surprised if he sits out this year without getting a job.
I'm really curious how the Vegas Raiders are going to go. I saw that new stadium, new pictures of it. They're putting the roof up on Allegiant Stadium. That thing looks badass. I
go to Vegas every year, week 1 of the NFL, every year, except this year we're going in August because my buddy can't go for his kids, and they have to go back to school in September, so his wife just up his ass about that. So we're going to August. So I've seen it like kind of going up since. I was there twice last year. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And I definitely suspect whenever the Giants get out there, I'll make it a twice a run year when the Giants play them, which won't be for a while, because when they announced they're going to Vegas, the Giants. In fact, the game the Giants played Oakland last was the Geno Smith game. Where they benched Eli for Geno Smith. That dumb. You're gonna bench him not for Geno Smith, bench him for the rookie.
Right, Jones. God.
Well, no, this is before Daniel Jones.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, this is Alex Tanney was their backup, or third string, excuse me.
Oh, right, okay. Jeez.
Right.
Wow. Fantasy football jibber jabber, comics, watching comics, catch all that. Kevin Goote, GOOTE.com, and Twitter. Anything else? Instagram, Facebook, anything like that? Else people should also follow?
Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that, and all the shows that I do. Gutting for Twitter. Gutting the Sacred Cow, Instagram, Facebook.
Correct.
And is it Fantasy Jibber on Twitter? I forget. Facebook, Instagram, Fantasy Football Jibber Jabber. And Comics Watching on Twitter. Comics Watching Comics on, again, Instagram and Facebook.
Fantastic. Kevin, thanks for being on the show. I really do appreciate it.
No, man, not a pleasure. My pleasure. The pleasure was mine. Thanks again for having me. It was a good conversation, man.
Awesome. Next week, when I come back for another Broadcasters podcast, I really hope that we're moving along from the protests and transitioning into discussion and dialogue. That's what I'd really like to get to. More than anything else. The memorial for George Floyd happened as I recorded earlier today. And just saying, let's start talking. And we can't expect the media to do it for us. So again, I think there's a lot of things where, the intents of media, entertainment, and culture converging here on this show tonight, as I talked about, it's important, but I think there's a way we got to be able to understand where the digital disruption lies, where people's opinions lie, and how they're being and what they're receiving in terms of information and where they're getting their information from. My point is, I think we're getting much more information for the digital disruptors online. We're seeing more than anything else online. That's more than I can tell for anything that's media establishment, because media companies, they're looking to make a profit, and making a profit is more important than reporting the news correctly. They feel like they might have an obligation to it, but they don't fulfill that obligation all the time. I don't believe they do. And it doesn't matter which side of the spectrum you are. You have a political bias to it, any kind of a bias, I don't agree with that. And again, as I saw earlier, limiting harmful content and disseminating the news and information, no. That should be left up to the consumer. It should be left up to the people that are consuming the content. Till next week, content is king, and the control of your content, and the control of the content that you look at and consume, and here is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast, presented by BroadcastersPodcast.com and KingofPodcasts.com. The Broadcasters Podcast is brought to you by KingofPodcasts.com/Amazon. If Amazon is good enough for the King of Podcasts, it most certainly is good for you. KingofPodcasts.com/Amazon. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program. The Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at KingofPodcasts.com.